Hello and welcome back to the How to Get an Analytics Job podcast. So we've got a really heavy hitter of a guest. So Prashant, you've worked with some like major companies. You've got a very impressive educational background. And it's funny that the space that you're in, I literally had a student say, hey, I just interviewed for a job. They said it wasn't a good fit, but the manager said you might be a better fit for a decision science role. So how about we start off the episode with you defining what decision science even is, and then we can jump into kind of your backstory.
Yeah. Thank you, John David, for having me. It's a pleasure. Um, yeah, I mean, this term decision science and data science and machine learning and analytics have all been around for a while. I think back when I started my career, we only used to call it analytics. So everything was analytics, right? And then you would have, descriptive analytics and then more on the predictive analytics, which was just that was the term that was used. But I think as the industry evolved, the use cases kind of became broader and broader. And so decision science is a field that helps businesses make decisions based on data, right? So for example, one could be using data science and machine learning to to help with like self-driving cars, right? How to navigate driveways and all that. Or one could use data science techniques to help companies inform how much inventory they should have, right? Or how much demand they're going to get. So anything that helps companies make like business decisions is a field we call decision science.
Okay. And it's funny. So Drew, if you're listening, he's my student. He couldn't make it. He had a call
Yeah.
right at this time. But he wanted me to explicitly ask you, what is the difference between data science and decision science?
Yeah. So data science is an input, I would say, right? So when data science is a tool in that sense. So one would use data science tools to make decisions.
Mhm.
And the reason why I called my role as a decision science leader in my past role at Apple was because it is not the technique that matters, it's the outcome that matters. So one could, let's say, get a great business insight by just doing a simple cross tab. One doesn't have to do the most complex techniques. So just making sure that everybody in the team was focused on, hey, our purpose is to help companies make decision, right? And not necessarily do the most complex of techniques. Sometimes the simpler is better. In fact, more often than not, simpler is better.
Okay, so I just learned something. I guess I'm a decision scientist then, because I don't care about the advanced tools and all the crazy stuff.
Right. Right.
I'm much more interested on the business side of things and
Yeah.
how the business, like the game of sales, is played, for example, and how you have to have awareness campaigns to generate leads that you need to pre-qualify, and then you need to find your close rate.
Yep.
So if you can adjust any of the different metrics within that funnel, that can
Right.
have a huge impact on the business.
Right. And the reason why I started using this term is, in the market, when we go out and say, okay, we're looking for data scientists, we might find people who are more interested in, let's say, doing data science work or machine learning for something like Siri or Google Assistant, right?
Mhm.
We're training a virtual assistant to learn better things, and that is a very different skill set than what you were talking about, is managing the sales funnel.
Right.
um, so we had to kind of somehow differentiate that we are this versus not. And that is how the decision science term has come up, and not only us, right? A lot of people in the industry use the term to denote like this category of problems that we want to solve.
Awesome. All right. So why don't you walk us through kind of your history, because it's really, really impressive.
Well, thank you. So I actually am an engineer by training, and I started my career as a software developer for Motorola. And back when the world was in 2G, we were developing 5G systems. So did like a lot of like really intense, or what I think what Elon Musk would call hardcore uh, stuff, right? Like building systems from the ground up. And then suddenly, this is like late 2000s, and this whole term of data being the new oil was coming up, right? Like world was getting on the internet, more data was generated, and that became like the wild west, that there is so much data out there and people just need to figure out how to manage that and make use of it. So I joined a small startup called Mu Sigma back then. It eventually turned out to be a unicorn by the time I quit.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
so joined that in India. It was a data science, decision science consulting firm. So did consulting work for a bunch of Fortune 500 companies across like Europe and US. And then after that, I joined Apple. I was By the time I left, I was leading their analytics and data science organization, managing end-to-end analytics for the revenue and the cost side of the world, for for a segment of the operations business that I multi-billion operations business that we were part of. Um,
Very
yeah,
cool.
and just recently, I started my own company. We call it Ficus Analytics, and again, right, the objective or the north star of the company is to make consumption of analytics frictionless, right? So we build,
Awesome.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, and cool. And what's really cool about that is that I saw the email thread. So
yeah,
you're interviewing one of my students, what, in
yes,
3 hours?
yes, yes, yes,
So yeah. And,
yes,
and it is what's so cool about that is that, Gavin has sales experience and then also an understanding of analytics. So like I think that's something that people don't think about too much is like how can you start to stack things on top of each other, like your area of expertise and then your skill. I think there's this way overemphasis on just skills right
yes,
now.
yes, yes, and I often tell this to people, right? We all have, people, especially who are earlier in their career, right, have like 3-4 decades of career ahead of them,
Hmm.
and that's a long time.
That's true.
And what we know now, or what is cool now, will definitely not be relevant or cool in like 2 decades. I hope it isn't, right? There are new stuff that have come in. So being married to here is my skill set, but especially early on in the career, is probably not a great idea.
I learned that lesson by creating a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
There's this concept of like trendy content versus evergreen.
Mm.
And how can you decipher, and I think that concept of what's my YouTube topic
Yeah.
applies directly to what is my professional brand. So
Yeah.
if it's when I first started my career, I was a tableau specialist,
Mm-hmm.
which is really limiting. It's also very risky because what if Power BI comes in and dominates the market, and
Yep.
then in 5 years Tableau doesn't exist? So
Right.
then I'm taking on the risk that Tableau has into my own career, to where
That's
then
right.
I branched out into being just an analytics expert, and
Yeah.
that's much more evergreen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
saying like I work on this one tool and I solve this one type of problem is very limiting versus, oh, I help executives make use and understand of their data.
Right.
And that's so
Right.
much broader. And that's not, 10, 15 years, they're probably still going to be having that same issue.
Yes. 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 Right. And it's Tableau today. It could be some other tool in the future, right? And we'll just have to reskill ourselves a little. But yeah, as long as that's the mindset, I think people are setting themselves up for success.
Gotcha. All right. So you have an MBA from the Wharton School of Business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which that's like one of the top tier MBAs out there
It's
on
cool.
earth.
It's cool.
Um, and one of the things that we talked about when we had kind of our pre-interview prep is that the way to think about grad school is not necessarily what are you. I mean, I guess some people in a different position can go to grad school to reskill, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it's much better to go out into the workplace, get paid to develop those skills, and then you go to the best grad school that you can because you buy into the network, and then all of a sudden that just opens up so many opportunities for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree, right? I think formal grad school education is more of a long-term play. Uh,
Right.
I mean, but again, right? Some people might need that to get their next job, and that's a segment of people that's out there. But for a lot of other people, it's going to be mostly it's going to be the last major degree one is going to get. So it is definitely a long-term play.
Right. I actually that kind of hits on a pretty nuanced point of
Yeah.
I went to get my MBA with a concentration in analytics
Mm-hmm.
to gain the confidence to then go pursue this career in
Yep.
this space. And what I'm realizing is that I didn't have to pay, $30,000 to go and do that. I could have, like, everything's permissionless. Like, I can go and download data and start analyzing it and teaching it to myself. Like, I don't need, a 30, 40. I mean, some of these grad schools are like well into the six figures
Oh
for
yeah.
just like 1 to 2 years, which is
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
But all right, so now let's kind of circle it back to the topic at hand here, which is, do you have any just, I guess, like career advice cornerstones, or what would be your advice to someone who is, so the two people we have on the call right now
Mm-hmm.
are currently they've worked in analytics, they have multiple years of experience. How can they go about expanding their career and kind of growing it?
Yeah. Yeah. It all starts with, first of all, we all talk about growing careers and expanding careers. But for some people, maybe the definition of growth and expansion is different, right? They
Mhm.
might have a different personal situation or different personal goal, and they are just happy doing what they're doing. And I think that's absolutely a fine, thing to do, right? One doesn't have to always think about the next promotion or the next raise and all that, right? Life is much bigger than that. But then, so it all starts with intention, right? Like, where do you see yourself? Who are you intrinsically, and what matters to you the most, right? So for some people, growth could be being really good at the data science work that they do, right?
Mhm.
um, it doesn't have to be being a manager. It just could be like, I am the best individual contributor in terms of data science that I can be. And the market is great, right? It pays well. One can build a whole career out of that and not having to manage anybody really. um, the 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 co-founder of HubSpot, Dharmesh Shah, he's the CTO of HubSpot, or was the CTO. He is still the CTO of HubSpot, and he says he doesn't manage a single person, right? He's an individual contributor, and he till date writes code and does architecting and all that. So that is a very legitimate path if somebody wants to take. um, I just
Okay, so I have thoughts on this, and I kind of
Yeah,
want to
go
get your
ahead,
opinion on this.
go ahead.
Okay, so I think that there's two tracks essentially. So
Yeah,
you could be a subject matter expert, because a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh, I want to learn machine learning, I want to do
yeah,
predictive, like all this really advanced stuff. It's like, that's, you can do that and you can specialize on that, but that's you're going to be an individual contributor most likely.
right.
And some in, like, I was talking to a recruiting agency, and I mean, some of the top tier Amazon analysts who are just individual contributors are making multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Um, because if you think about it, if their recommendation algorithm is improved by 3% conversion rate, what is that worth? Like $100 million.
Yeah, yeah,
So paying them $600,000 all of a sudden makes total sense if they're hitting those objectives.
absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
And
So
then,
the reason
yes,
why
go ahead.
somebody wants to do management is not because they want to earn more money, because they can do that in
Mhm.
in a highly specialized, like what you said, like subject matter expert role.
Right. So, okay, so there's the subject matter, and then the other side is you start to move into management, and then you start getting into teams, and
Hmm.
then it's the leverage there is not your specific and unique knowledge space. It's that there, instead of just having you solve the problem, you now have six people plus you kind of driving the forces, and
Yeah.
that's really, really powerful in terms of the economic output that you can achieve from that.
That's right. I like how you're thinking about it, right? Because it's really the economics, right? The value you bring to the business, right? You
Right.
get out of it essentially, right? If you just think about it from that perspective, right? Uh,
Yeah, well, I see a lot of parallel thinking between because the decision science is new to me. But you
yeah,
said inputs, so skills are input. The
yeah,
output is the economic value. What's the ROI? So I've been talking about this and thinking about this for, I started teaching 3 years ago, and it seems like all the students, I think what it is they get anxious. So they just double down and they take course after course. So they study and they study and they study. But at a certain point, you've got to develop judgment.
Yes.
And that's really, how to deploy that. And then, okay, before I forget this point, that the guy who was like the CTO, my understanding, and this might be a controversial take, of C-suite executives, presidents, people who run companies, it's less about output and it's more about, it's almost like they're a politician.
Yeah.
Like they are, thinking about the vision. They're thinking about, is everyone happy? Is everything working? They're less doing the day-to-day work.
Yeah.
And because a lot of people see that and they're like, well, these people are what, they're just taking all this money and there's no value. It's like, well, if you've developed the right strategic partnerships and you chart the right course, I mean, that could be the difference between the business existing and not existing.
Absolutely. I think it reminds me of 2 points, right? One is, it depends on the stage the company is. So Jeff Bezos, in one of his interviews, mentioned that he gets paid to make small number of high impact decisions. So he doesn't look at like day-to-day operations of Amazon, right? But he gets paid to do that. It also depends on where the company is. When Amazon was a startup, or I mentioned about HubSpot, when it was a startup, like these guys were in the trenches, right? Building stuff, right? Like working on things on a day-to-day basis. So it kind of really depends on what's the need and where somebody is.
Right. And it's interesting though, because now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like kind of piecing all these thoughts together. In order for you to develop judgment, which I think is a skill set into itself, you have to have consequences or skin in the game.
Yeah.
Was it Nassim Taleb who wrote that book, Skin in the Game?
Yeah.
Where it's like, if you just learn skills in a vacuum and it's a practice set and there's no outcome, I mean, you're kind of learning, like you might know the mechanisms and like where to mash the buttons, but that's only the input. It's not, the process and then to the output.
Yeah.
All right.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting.
All right. So we've got three. Well, I got one student of mine who graduated and got a job, and then I've got 2 prospective students. So I'm going to go ahead and pull them in, and then because I know they've got questions for you. Awesome. So, all right. So let me introduce them. So this is Justin right here. Justin Miller went through our career services program. Justin, when did you go through? Like what? 2 months ago? At this point? Oh, you're muted.
There we go. So probably about 2 or 3 months ago.
Gotcha. And so for those of you who are listening, we have 2 programs. We have the apprenticeship of people who were trying to break into the space. Justin, you had already had 3 years of analytics experience before you got to work with me. So then we kind of helped you get that promotion, which was really cool. And then we've got Satya, who is currently, you're getting a master's degree in
I'm doing my master's degree, John.
Yeah, in engineering, which it sounds like you've got a very similar background to Prashant here. And then we got Johannes, who I think you've been running your own business for the past few years, but you were a data scientist at Airbnb for a few years.
Yeah, I was data scientist about 27. I was an analyst from 2012 to 2017, market research and data scientist, and I just been away from that life for about almost 6 years now, and looking to get back into it, and not quite sure exactly where I fit in. Do I want to be in project management, people management, or actually individual contributor?
Gotcha. All right. So do you guys have any questions? I'm gonna stop talking. You guys take it from here. I'm sure you have some questions.
Go ahead. It typically takes 5
Going
seconds.
Once, going twice. Are you guys nervous? Justin.
I mean, I'll first start by saying, thank you for joining the call, and I think it's pretty cool to be speaking to someone of your caliber. In terms of growth, and John kind of touched base on this, a lot of people, and I've noticed this from talking with various directors and just other people as well as that, when it comes to growth, a lot of people will tend to stick within a role for X amount of time. You were with Apple, correct?
Yep.
So at what point did you determine, it's time for me to take this next step on and advance myself in another aspect or in another degree?
That's an interesting question, right? And I have my own framework for it. Um, so let's say you're in a current role, right, that pays you X dollars, and you think that your potential is much more, right? Um, let's say your market is going to pay you, let's say X plus, $10, right? Now that might be too less of a difference for you to like go and jump the ship, right? Because when you jump your ship, you lose a lot of brand that you've built. You lose a lot of connection that you've built, a lot of goodwill that you may have earned. So think of that as an investment. And when you see that, the more you're investing in your career in your current role, right, you kind of start building a higher market level pay for yourself. And when you think that's substantial for you, and that's subjective, right, what is substantial versus not, but when that is substantial, that's when you move. For me personally, it has always been about, is this the next, you know is this the place where I want to spend the next 5 6 7 years or 10 years of my career in, right? Is this the next quantum leap that I want to take? Because look, if there are certain problems that I'm dealing with in the current workplace, most likely they're going to happen in the next one as well. Right, so I'll have to rather develop skills to you know to fight with them, or to not be bothered by that, right, if that's what it is, rather than run away from it, right? But then again, right, it's very subjective. I mean, there are places where it's not a good fit, and the sooner it's not a good fit, just move on. So are you moving on because you're running away from something, or are you moving on because you are going to the next big thing, right? I think that's more important to answer for yourself.
Well, actually, I got a
Gotcha. Thanks
follow-up
for clearing that.
question.
Yeah.
So, Justin, how's the new role going? So we've texted a little bit via LinkedIn,
Yeah.
but yeah, how's it going?
I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
like I think what was big for me was culture with the company, and so like being able to go into a company that had a great culture similar to where I was coming from, is amazing. Number one, and then diving into this role even more. So I'm not my role now, data analyst on the digital side. So I deal more so with like ad agencies and the ad world, so to say. And it's this world is more so new to me because I'm more on the retail side. I was coming more from on the retail side, so getting more into this ad role and seeing like the different acronyms that's used and just things like that is pretty cool. And it's funny. I was going to mention, I'm a Tableau guy. I know Power BI as well and things like that. But when it comes to aggregating data, it was more so SQL. So I'm learning Tableau prep flow, in which that was something that was totally new to me getting into this role.
Mhm.
Many people think, I got to know everything when I go into a job, and it's not true. Like here I am with years of experience, and I'm learning Tableau prep flow to build a data structure that's going to flow into the dashboards.
Right. I think it's so much better to get the job and then get paid to develop the skill. Because if one way to frame it up is that if you're taking 100 hours worth of courses, that's basically you're volunteering 100 of your hours of time for no economic return other than maybe the potential of a job, which I mean, a lot of the people, I've probably done like 150 discovery calls for the program over the last 6 months. I'm hit. A lot of the people I talk to are like, yeah, I've taken 50 or 100 hours worth of courses and I can't interview because all I can talk about, all you have to show is this like badge of, hey, I have 50 of these badges, which I mean, Prashant, what do you think is well, I mean, actually, let me, I was going to lead you in that question and say, are these even valuable, and like kind of throw shade, but what is the value of taking online courses in your opinion? To be a little bit more fair.
Yeah. I think online courses have transformed how people learn.
Mhm.
Right. You know, Earlier it would take them, a formal degree for everything that they want to learn. I guess now, online courses helps people like learn like a very specific skill set they want to learn. So I think that is very useful. But that by itself is not sufficient, right?
Right.
When let's say I interview people, I look at like their projects that they have done, right? I would look at their GitHub profile and see like, what kind of work they do, what kind of code they write. So those are the kind of things I would look at. Now they might have learned that skill through an online course, right? And that's great. Or they might have, a friend who knows things and is ready to teach them, and that's also a good way to do that. Right? I mean, when I started my career, there were no online courses for data science. There were no courses for data science, period. So the only way to learn was learn it from people who practice it, right? It was more of an apprenticeship kind of a model, right? Back in the day, if you wanted to be a carpenter, you joined another carpenter, and they taught you. So that's how I kind of learned it. So these are all different ways, right? I think online courses can definitely get the head start. But people will still have to do their own projects and do their own personal projects, so to speak, or use it, apply it somewhere.
Right. I guess to be explicit about my thoughts on this, you hit a point of diminishing returns. So maybe it's between the 10th and the 11th course where it's like, okay, that 11th course gave you less of a return than the 10th course. But there's a certain, and maybe it's just 3 courses. You take 3 courses on machine learning, and then you need to just go out and start working on it.
Yeah.
And because I see people get stuck in that trap of just like they're hyper fixating on skills essentially.
Yeah.
And it was, Prashant, so cool that we were talking about, okay, well, decision science is less about the emphasis on, machine learning and the super technical stuff. It's about, all right, how does data plug into this decision? And it doesn't matter, what medium you use. Like it would be impressive. It was a predictive algorithm, but you said a crosstab might be enough at that point.
Yeah.
Okay. So Satya, we just had a conversation, earlier this week?
A couple of days back.
Yeah. So you're in that position where you've worked for a number of years. You've actually managed a really large team. And then in our discovery call, you were saying, I think I want to learn machine learning and all this advanced stuff. And I kind of pushed back and challenged you a little bit of, well, if you've managed a large team and you have a master's degree and you're learning data science, maybe instead of the subject matter expert role, maybe the moving into a managerial role, which actually might at this point in time pay quite a bit more than what you were expecting. Yeah. So do you want to kind of break down, like, what's your thought process on that? Like, why did you get to that point where, what's the appeal of advanced data science?
Yes. So first of all, good morning, everyone. And it's been extreme weather conditions here. And I just logged in with my mobile because there is a power outage here.
Oh my God.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's -12 guys here.
Wow.
Where are you calling from?
In College Station, Texas, Prashant, sir.
Oh, wow.
I'm doing my master's in Texas A&M at College Station. I'm Satya. I'm from India. I recently moved to USA for my master's, and it's very nice to have a connection like John. Because of him, I came to know about you podcast. And yeah, before like having my questions put forward, the situation where I was right now, I led a wonderful team back in India for a e-commerce company, which later shifted towards the health science industries like human genetics and all, and which made me actually, due to COVID, my CEO asked me to focus everything on data, do anything which you want to do, but on system, but not commute to the workplace. So at that time, I developed more love towards analytics, because till that time I used to do marketing analytics, and aware which particular factor is influencing our sales by just doing correlation. Just by just doing simple correlations, and by just evaluating the number of sales coming from follow-up calls, I used to give insights to marketing team.
Yes.
It's fun because not much data used to be involved. And but after COVID, I gained a lot of insight towards data science and data analytics, which made me to pursue a master's level degree, because I've been graduated in 2016, my undergrad. So long gap in learning process, in filling the gaps with industry and myself. So I decided, let us pick a university which can help me uphold my previous skills like supply chain management, and add new skills like data. So I took the degree in industrial engineering, which is having a focus of data analytics as well in Texas A&M. And I just love data. The first initial course of mine is machine learning.
Yeah.
And algorithms the professor taught me in the way we can visualize everything with running back, or like seeing the backstage what is happening in every algorithm. It made me to fall in love.
Yes.
And I decided to rise in love in machine learning. So
Yes.
I decided to learn more, gain a lot of things, and my summer break and this break has been great. I started developing projects in SQL. Like John, there was a guy who helped me to simplify the job process, do projects, socialize with people, build network, and show that in your portfolio. So I started developing my Power BI skills in visualization and all, and it's been fun. I'm doing wonderful things. But when I met John, he kept me. He actually initiated an idea in my mind that why can't you do supply chain management roles where analytics is involved, because you manage a good team and you are saying I have a love for data as well. So I mean, it's been like couple of days and I applied for like 10-15 roles.
Oh, cool.
All
And
the best.
today I have a call, maybe in
Yeah.
the afternoon or evening. One
Yeah.
of the HR manager approached me that I love your profile. We need to have a call or discussion. And I said I'm in more towards data rather than supply chain. But still, I have my course completed in that. If you still want me to talk, I believe, because I don't want to create false expectations. That absolutely, we actually in need of guys who are actually in love with data, have experience in supply chain management. So that one change actually created a lot of impact in the way I approach people towards my future job roles. That's been a great advice, John. I mean, I never thought in that way, that why don't I leverage my skills which I have in the last 5 years. So that's been great. And to you, Prashant sir, like I have a lot of things to ask, but first and foremost, does a specific degree matter? Why whatever you said regarding the GitHub, like while you're recruiting a guy, you look into how he did the project, what is the approach in doing the project and all. But do the degree matters? Because I'm still thinking to take a data science degree. Still last semester I was in the dilemma ki, I should have done data science direct degree rather than industrial and data specialization.
Yeah.
I got a scholarship. That's the reason I didn't shifted the major, because the major which I'm doing after the first time they gave me a scholarship of 10,000 USD. So I decided not to jump into the new major like data science. Still learning everything from the major which I'm having. So does the degree matter in
So this is a great question, right? Like, does a degree matter? And I think it all goes down to what's the purpose, right? So what does a degree do? It gives a signal that it's a shorthand for here are the skills this person would bring in. Right, so that's what a degree is, right? And so when somebody says, okay, he has a master's in data science, it basically means that he would probably be knowing about some amount of machine learning, some amount of database management, some amount of cloud compute and all that. So that's what a degree is supposed to indicate. What degree also does, it gives you a network of people. So those are the things that a degree comes with. So if somebody could get those things without a degree, then it would serve the same purpose. But for some people, getting all those things individually may not be an option or may not necessarily be feasible, and then a degree would work. So think about, to take a step back, right, and say, why is degree important? Before asking is degree important or not, right? And what does a degree do? And then you would have your answers.
Got it.
Yeah, I was going to say, to piggyback off that point, we just let our first student in this last cohort with no degree. He's literally working in FedEx moving boxes, and he just landed a $70,000 analytics job last week. So we've completely bypassed. Yeah, I absolutely. It's funny. We did exactly what you just laid out there. Like we had him build out a portfolio. So he has started his own clothing line. So he started analyzing that data, built a portfolio around that. Then we coached him through that process. So I think a degree helps, but also too, it's really important how you communicate that, because you could have a degree and not. Well, it's interesting because we've had multiple students who have masters, in data science and analytics come through the program, and they would really struggle in the interview process. So they would say, hey, what did you learn in the process, or what did you learn during your master's of analytics? They just froze up and they couldn't even talk about it. So it's like, it's a little bit of a gamble. Also too, I think a factor that matters is, and it relates to the network that you buy into, the brand of the university is important. There are certain for-profit universities that are almost like a counter signal of like, they have such a bad brand, and that it's almost like, oh, if they have this degree, I won't name the specific for-profit universities. I just don't want a lawsuit on me. But I've had hiring managers tell me that if I see XYZ name, I will filter them out of the pool. Now you're at Texas A&M, which I think is a very, very good school. So like that's like top notch. That's not your issue. That's more so just to kind of expand upon. We got quite a few people in the chat right now who are potentially thinking about getting a master's or not. All right. So, Johannes, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. I just I have a lot of nephews in the house, and like I just don't want them to be in camera, so I took myself off camera. Christmas time.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, and I also took it on the phone because I'm just constantly moving around trying to find a quiet space. Yeah, so apologies for taking myself off the camera.
Oh, no worries. Well, you've been there and you've been quiet. I want you to get your chance to ask some questions or talk a little bit.
Absolutely. I think my first and foremost, my primary goal was to just listen what people are saying, where they're coming from. One of my issue is not feeling competent to do certain things. Like I've literally I built a brand from scratch that is you can find it in Sprouts or Wegmans. But even though I'm capable of managing products, developing products, I can't seem to communicate that, and which is why I've been leaning more towards individual contributor. Having about 7 years from graduated graduate school 2011. From 2011 to 2017, I was essentially on analytics role, and I could talk about those. That's my passion. I would love to hear like how an individual who has been self-employed that's capable of managing people and products be able to communicate that, say, if with a hiring manager.
And communicate what?
Like the skill sets of, the capacity to manage products, multitask, build products, not just start, but to start a project and see it to fruition, like complete it, from A to B, be comfortable with ambiguity, be comfortable with high-paced environment. It's, yeah.
So let me start by saying that not being confident is not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, it actually shows that you're a thinking person, and people who know a lot know that they don't know a lot as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Einstein.
Right? So yes, right. So so not being like super confident is okay.
Mm-hmm.
It probably means that you are aware of things that you don't know.
Mm.
What is I think coming back to how do you project yourself, right? So that if that is your personality, your identity, right, what you are, the best way to start to do it is to do it just often, right? So nobody gets their sales pitch right the first time. Right, it's just like the more you try, the more you spend time iterating it, you get it right. There is you can get some professional help maybe, right, or a friend who is a sounding board and say, hey, this is what I'm saying, right? Does it make sense to you or not? But the best way is to just keep trying, right? And at that point you will get to like, yeah, this is what's resonating with most people.
Yeah. So practice.
That's right.
Yeah.
When you see some of these leaders and you hear them sound so effortless, there's a lot of effort that goes in being effortless. It's a lot of practice.
Right, a lot of failure.
Failure.
Well, I mean that's like the motto of Silicon Valley: fail quick, right?
Yeah. I think that. Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Sell fast so you can succeed sooner.
That's
The
right.
sooner you feel something, it's a learning experience.
That's right.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's something I probably need to hear. And I guess, like, how do you decide whether, an individual should pursue, say, individual contributor, or pursue, like, is the ultimate role of individual contributor to be in a management role, or is it defined to be individual role indefinitely? Like, what are usually, like, the career progress for individual contributor versus, let's say, somebody in a management role?
Yeah, I think we just talked about it in the beginning, right? So there are two paths. One can be
Mm-hmm.
an individual contributor, be a subject matter expert, right, John, as you would put it, and get great, make a great living out of it, great career out of it,
Mm-hmm.
and and do that for 3-4 decades of their career, and that's absolutely fine. The other is to go on the management track, so manage a team of data scientists and all that, right? And grow in that path. So those are absolutely, both are great paths, right? You just have to figure out which one's you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got a question from chat.
Okay.
Is an individual contributor the same as an independent contractor?
No. So
And then,
individual contributor is basically a role. So
okay,
you could be in a company, and when you're not managing other people, so you don't have reporting, uh, you don't have people reporting to you. You call it individual contributor. So basically, you're not responsible in that sense for your team's work, right? You're more in control of your work. Independent contractor is more of the arrangement of employment between you and the employer, right? So you could be an employee on the payrolls versus a contractor. So that's more of the engagement between people versus about the role.
right. So I've been an independent contractor in the analytics space for 6 years now.
Yeah.
So I never have gotten a W-2. Well, I did 2 internships. They paid me as W-2 during my MBA, but since then I've gotten paid nothing except 1099s from clients. So yeah, so that's it's definitely riskier being an independent contractor than being up under an umbrella. But actually, that's kind of an interesting question. Prashant, what's the risk, or how risky is it to be an independent contributor? And I guess we could also bridge that into, like, well, what's the risk in your career going that path versus? I think I understand it from a managerial perspective, but I would love to hear your take on that too.
Independent contractor or individual contributor? Which
individual contributor.
What is the risk? I mean, it really is about the person. Some people are just, I've known people who've given up management roles because they realize that, hey, that's not for me, and I'm more productive, and I get a lot more done when I'm an individual contributor. Like Silicon Valley is full of people like that, right? Where they are hardcore engineers, or like great at designing products, and they would do that, and that's an absolutely viable career path, lucrative career path. So it's not about risk of one versus other. It's about what is resonating with you, right? Who you truly are.
Yeah, I guess to clarify, my thoughts, the ideas that are coming to my head are, it's
Yeah.
almost a little bit like the Red Queen theory. Have you heard of that?
No. What
It's
is
from that book, Alice in Wonderland, where the Red Queen's like, I'm running as fast as I can just to stay in the same spot. So if you're an independent contributor, you have to stay on. Like, for example, if you wanted to be a Power BI individual contributor, that means that you have to learn every single update, and Power BI updates every single month.
Yeah.
So that is part of the risk that you're mitigating there, is that if you just got relaxed on that and you let that got behind 6 months,
That's
you might
right.
lose your job because a new update comes out and then everything you've built is broken.
That's right. That's right. Well, I think we should take a step back here, right? And if you're in an industry that's changing a lot, regardless of what role you're playing, like, you need to be up to speed with what's going on. So let's say if somebody is a manager of data scientist and is still living in the Excel era, he would be a terrible manager, or she would be a terrible manager, right? So if one is in an industry that's evolving and changing, then being up to speed with what's going on is not optional.
Right.
It's something that one has to do, right? One has to reskill themselves. But to the specific problem of do I have to be updated with the newest release of Power BI, or like a new shiny tool that comes out, like ours, right? Would I have to reskill myself? The answer is, like, for some people that comes naturally. It's just part of who
Right.
they are. And this is a great point, right? Because if you're somebody who just wants to learn new things anyway, would do it out of their own accord, then maybe individual contributor is a great place to be, because you would do that anyway.
Right. It's almost like if you like to tinker with software and tools and constantly just like build that up.
Yeah.
That it's almost like you inherently enjoy that, and then you're going to get paid a lot of money to do that. Because the deeper you get into that, the more economic value you can produce.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if somebody's on the management side, right? So being an effective management person, they would need to be updated with what's the latest in the field, right? Otherwise, they're just going to be, bureaucratic, fat in the middle, I guess. It's not very useful.
Well, okay. So here's my thought on the risk of being a manager, going the managerial route, is that you are now responsible for more than just you as an individual. So if you hire the wrong person and then that person screws up an entire process, they're going to get fired probably, but so are you for bringing that into the organization. And then the higher up you go in the organization, the riskier it gets. Because what is it? The average CEO is their tenure is like what, 2 to 5 years or something like that. They don't last very long, because then at that point that problem expands, because it's like now you're hiring people who are hiring people who might be hiring people. So it's like there's so much that could go potentially wrong there.
Yeah.
But so you've been a manager though. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. If that, is that something, when you were a senior manager at Apple, is that something you were worried about?
That was the biggest thing that bothered. So when I became a first-time manager, so I used to be an individual contributor, and I did pretty good at that. When I became the first-time manager, I suddenly realized that I had this inherent need to be in control of things. I want to know every single thing that's going on. Right, so because that's how you succeeded as an individual contributor, right? You knew exactly where the data came from, what this algorithm did, how you presented the insight, like all those things. And now I want to be involved and know like what everybody in the team is doing and be updated with it. And I just realized that that's just too much of a work. And I still remember, it's been more than a decade since I've been a manager since then. But that first time, it was overwhelming. I'm like, I was spending probably like 80 plus hours a week just so that I could be on top of everything. And right, because you want control, right? Because that's what individual contributors love, and I like doing it. So it took me like a lot of sleepless nights to be okay with not being in control, and developing my tool set that, okay, I may not know every little details of things, but I know enough that I know things are going well.
Right.
So that's a great point, right? Like if you're somebody who loves to control everything, right, that's going to go away. A lot of control is going to go away, and people will have to be comfortable with delegating and relying on other people to deliver.
Yeah, that's something I'm actively working on right now. It's like we have a small team. So Justin, since we last talked, I brought on 2 new people. So I brought on a social media person. So Ian Csuite has 40,000 followers. He posted about the program twice, and we got 240 applications in a week. So he's he's our social media person. And then we also brought on an analytics, currently someone who's working as a manager who's going to be coaching people through the interview process. So the team's getting quite a bit more robust since.
That's great to hear, man, especially knowing where your goals were and like where you wanted to take things. That's pretty solid.
Gotcha.
Congrats.
Well, thank you. All right. So do you guys have any other questions? I know, Satya, you said you had like a whole whole list that you could rattle out?
As I already mentioned, I have a love towards data science than data analysis, actually. So, but recently, the hot topic in the round is ChatGPT, right?
Yes.
So, what actually you believe the future of having a manpower, human intelligence in data science teams with respect to the competition we have, or the rate at which the automation is being developed?
That's a great question. That's actually one of the topics that I think about a lot. And when we started Ficus, it was basically exactly the kind of thought process that happened. That there is a lot of time spent even today in surfacing insights, right? So imagine you have you know 500 dashboards, right? Like with all the tools and all the training that people are getting, we can quickly generate dashboards, right? Quickly generate insights. But we don't have enough time to go through all of them and say what's going on in the business. And that's where some of the kind of there's this huge new space of technology called augmented analytics. If you haven't looked at that, look at that. That's basically taking traditional analytics and applying machine learning and AI on top of that to make that decisions, help with like making decisions much better, right? So that's where kind of our current product also comes, right? That we go through all these multiple dashboards, come up with recommendations that, hey, where should you focus on right now, right? And if you want to do some root cause analyses, can you do that right there? Can we discover insight faster for you, right? So I think automation or AI is going to transform things, make things easier. It's going to help people. If the question is going to replace people, I don't think, at least in our working career time, that's necessarily happening. It's going to provide more opportunities to people. That has been the case, and it's just going to give a lot of horsepower to people, right? So they can do much more than they have been.
Great insights. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Justin, I feel like you've only asked one question. Yeah. Oh, Johannes, you got something?
Yeah, like I'm noticing, I'm hearing mixed review. This is just like in regards to application process about how much effort should be made into a cover letter. A lot of people are saying, oh, you don't even read your resume, let alone your cover letter. I guess the question is like, how much time should an individual dedicate to actually writing, updating a cover letter for a job?
I haven't. Okay, so I don't think cover letter is all that important. But cover letter, the thought process behind the cover letter is important, right? The thought process is that, why do you want this job? Why are you the best fit for this job? I think that is important. Now, you could be on a call with an HR and you could basically run your cover letter through that, right? Versus, writing it and sending it to them. So cover letter as a physical form may be less relevant now in the era of LinkedIn, where people are finding discoverability is easier, right? Like with GitHub profiles out there. So physical cover letter may become less relevant, but the thought behind it, that, hey, what is my statement of purpose, right? Why is this the right job for me? Why am I the right fit? Why should you consider me? I think that thinking is still important. So going through the process of creating the content for cover letter is absolutely important. Whether somebody physically writes it down and sends it to somebody, I think that's less relevant anymore.
Got it.
All right, so I'm gonna segue this into, so Justin, your salary is within Johannes's target range. So I think that we have an opportunity to get some like really concrete, very specific advice. So how many applications did you make? Did you even write a cover letter? And then how many interviews? And then how many of those led to offers?
Oh man. I went through quite a few interviews. I would say maybe about at least 50 interviews. And
50 interviews?
I went through a lot. I went through a lot of
Wow.
interviews. Like
That's huge.
I was just a person within that mind frame where I'm pumping out applications just to see what opportunity is going to be out there. If I was offering advice to somebody, it's just don't stop. And when I say interview, it could have been just a screening.
Okay.
But in regards to cover letter, I probably only had to submit a cover letter maybe like 3 times. They didn't really hold much value. It wasn't really necessary.
To answer your question, drop the cover letter. It's not important.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me was, and as he mentioned before, was like that experience showcasing where can someone go and see your work at. So being able to present a dashboard that from my Tableau page was just like, oh wow, okay, I can see what it is that you can do and where your skills reside at. And then another big thing was and I learned this for John, was on quantifying. So like being able to speak to the numbers and the impact of what I had upon a business within my resume, like showing that, whether it was, for me, it was like reducing the reducing the out of stock percentage by about 30%. Like it was huge. So me being able to showcase that within my resume helped me just a lot. So like really think about those things that you can bring. And that might help too in terms of speaking more about yourself on the leadership role. Like think about what it is you've actually done that may have had an impact on not only yourself, but on the business and on others. And writing it down or jotting it down on your phone, it helps with speaking to that and makes it more comfortable because it's natural.
Thank you.
Well, Johannes, you actually have an advantage because it's your business that you've been running. So you have full visibility into everything. So just go through and be like, oh, I tried this tactic and it increased sales by $50,000, or my close rate went higher, or, the fact that you've run your business, that is just chock full of stories and narratives that you can pull out to help sell yourself in the interview.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll give you some perspective on what, as a hiring manager, I think about when I see these numbers. So sometimes we say, hey, we improved the inventory turns by X, right? Or improved sales by Y.
Yes.
A lot of it is not what analytics did. A lot of it is, being in the right market, in the right place, having the right product. Sometimes you do the best analytics and yet if the product is not good, it wouldn't sell.
Right.
But when I see that, what it tells me is that person is thinking about business outcomes, that it's thinking about doing work that will impact something. So more than like, hey, did it improve sales by 15% or 50%? The fact that they did something that made impact, which is, substantial, I think that is important for me because, as a hiring manager, I want to look at somebody who works on things that drives impact versus just churns the wheel. So more than, the exact number, right? Like, hey, is this high or low or whatever, right? Quantifying it is important. And showcasing that this created an incremental value is important.
Understood.
So, Prashant, one of the risks I feel like you had as a manager at a huge company is that I think a lot of times data scientists get overly fixated on the technical stuff.
Yeah.
And because I've heard nightmare stories about data scientists spending 150 hours on this really advanced program that drives the profit by 0.0000001%. And that's probably one of your biggest, the biggest risk to you as a manager is that these people are huge nerds and they're going to nerd out, and you've got to rein them in and say okay, that's cool. You can have your pet project. Was it Google that's 20% of your time you can have your pet projects, but the other 80% has to be business focused? Because I do think there's a balance between exploring new things because maybe you'll hit something versus conserving, the state of the business and making sure that that's all, in order.
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. I mean, so there is no alternative to having great technical skills. It's absolutely needed, right? So we should not be downplaying that, but that by itself is not useful. One has to have the prudence and the wisdom to say how much is enough, right? And if I got a model that's 80% accurate and that's good enough, do I spend the next 3 weeks making it 85%? That's probably diminishing return, right? Not super useful. So one has to have the technical skills for sure, but also have the prudence to use it appropriately.
Right. Yeah, and so Johannes, we talked earlier this week, or was it 2 weeks ago? Last week, sometime
Yeah, I think
recently.
it was last week. Yeah, last week.
So I know one of your anxieties right now is that you were a data scientist for a name brand company back 6 years ago, and you're like, I need to get updated on the new current, tech stacks in the data science space. Prashant, do you have any advice on how he can go about navigating? Should he just reach out to somebody, or like what are there resources for that?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of online courses, so sign up for one of those. I think that would be a great way to get started. The other is just like start tinkering with things, like do a project, like there is, by the way, there is also something that a lot of people have started doing, is doing more like freelancing, so moonlighting or freelancing. I think that's also another area where if you could do a freelance project for something, just to learn that thing, then that can add that to your resume as well, right? That here's a project you actually delivered and you applied that skill and make some money on the side.
Yeah, like freelance from like Upwork and Fiverr, etc.
Yeah, right. So you're anyways building a Tableau dashboard, right? Why not get paid for building that, basically?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I have tried Upwork and Fiverr, and my finding was the rate that I feel like is comparable to myself wasn't necessarily. I think a person to do it abroad was just much cheaper than it was for me to do it. So I often would get like, oh, you're too expensive, etc., instead of, like, it's just been so much easier to outsource that work. And to be honest, when I first started my business, I did outsource my webpage development abroad because it was just so much cheaper. How do you combat that cost difference?
Okay, so first of all, Johannes, there's been so I feel you. When I first tried to get I got my first Upwork independent contracting work like 6 years ago, and it was flooded with people who would charge like $10 an hour for like advanced work. But what I think has happened on Upwork specifically is they have this toggle of US jobs only. And I know that's like kind of elitist and like kind of, but I think what was happening specifically in that culture is that, well, number one, you're on like opposite time, like the time tables don't line up. But then also two, a lot of times there's a language barrier as well. So like a lot of people were finding I can outsource this work for a much cheaper rate, but it takes me 4 to 5 times as much. Then you got to factor in, all right, well, let's say I charge 250, I value my time at 250 an hour. It's not worth me the money savings of, going from 100 to 25 is not worth, I'm actually losing money when I calculate my own sweat equity into that. So I go check out Upwork again. I do believe that it's changed to where you can bid on just US jobs only.
Understood.
I would also recommend, when I was on a previous episode with John, with Hunter actually interviewed me, and the advice that I was given was check out a lot of like small, like mom and pop companies, like companies who are just getting started or getting things on the roll, and you'd be surprised on how much you can help them leverage things. And like for myself, one of the first things I really got involved with was helping a chiropractic office where he was just new to the Instagram, Facebook, and Google Ads world, and me showcasing him that, and then getting that data and just creating these dashboards that showed him what he can do to help leverage some things, really like helped him tremendously. And I just added that to my resume and really pumped that out from there.
I love that thought, right? Basically, if somebody has gone out in the market, then it's too late, right? But if you could approach somebody before they've even gone out to the market, I think that's a great point. That's a great point, right? Then you're not competing with everybody else. You're just having a conversation one-on-one, and then figuring out how you could add value versus, oh, let me go and shop around, right? And see what else is out there.
Yeah, that was my mind frame. Like, I got to make this happen. So let me see who I can get to try to elevate what I'm trying to do.
yeah, that's essentially how I built up my own consulting agency. Although I took it even a step further and I started giving public talks on Analytics 101. And then I would have small business owners come in, and then that's my sales funnel right there. But that's a little bit aggressive, because if you're just trying to get 1 or 2 projects under your belt to expand your brand, I think that might, although, I mean, maybe not. Now that I'm thinking about it, saying, oh, I give talks, I give public talks on analytics. Prashant, what do you think about that? That's pretty impressive, right?
I think so.
That I'm a communicator, I'm an educator, I'm proactive in my community. It's also, you might meet people who could hire you or can, hire you for a project. So that's a really interesting idea. But yeah, Justin, you're definitely a hustler. You like go out there and you like grind, because you're like going to like networking events, like shaking hands and meeting people.
Yeah,
right?
I feel like it's all about getting out there and like exposing yourself. Like if you want to grow, you gotta get comfortable with the uncomfortable sometimes, and just say, let me put myself out there. Let's go get it. Not everything falls in your lap.
Being uncomfortable is a new comfort.
That's true. I've been so uncomfortable for so long that I don't even know what comfort is anymore.
But it's a great point, guys. I love listening to this discussion, like approaching companies, to do freelancing stuff where you're learning new thing, but you're getting paid rather than paying for learning it.
Right.
The same thing happened recently. Like I'm very new to NLP, natural language processing, but I'm very much fascinated about Hey Siri, because I recently bought my iPhone after coming. Hey Siri, hey Alexa. So there is a professor in my university who is an ex-astronaut in NASA, a very big profile madam. Like she's doing some project on NLP, but she's not into data. She's into risk analysis and all stuff. So she just posted in our group, and I happened to taking a course under her on risk analysis, and I really loved the way she teach people. So I just approached her, said that I'm very new to NLP, but I love data analytics and data science. I have good knowledge in algorithms and all. So if you can help me, what is your project? I may help you in doing the project. And she very much liked the way I approached, because there is no formal interview, no formal application. I just took the appointment of the professor, met her, and she has some general aviation accidents data of like some from the website itself of USA. She asked me to create cost casualty networks using NLP. I'm very new. I'm dumb in that at ground zero, because NLP is a very new thing. Rather than quantifying algorithms, it's the qualitative algorithms to be used. So I just said, I'm new to this. I will be learning. She'll be paying me like $16 per hour. My work already started in the last couple of weeks itself. And it's a new thing and new insights. I mean, it's like a new portal open in my mind.
Wait, so you're going to be doing neural linguistic programming for NASA?
No, it's not neural linguistic. It's natural language processing.
Ah, okay. Neural linguistic programming.
But both are same. Like both definition is NLP. The abbreviation is same for both, but the neural linguistic programming and natural language processing.
Interesting.
And I never heard of Upwork. So thanks to you guys, I try to apply in. Oh my God, it's just wonder and a lot of insight. I'm just blessed in this. This is what I could be doing, just sleeping on my couch. But
you guys are helping me out, because most of my content is about people breaking into the space, but I wanted to have one podcast where we talk to like, a huge leader in the space with my students who are already like out and have years of experience working, to where this is much more tactical and about like career advancement, rather than, all right, step 1, build a resume. Step 2, build a portfolio. Step 3, interview. To where this is like, you guys all have like amazing backgrounds. And now we're talking to someone who's got, like, Prashant, you're so impressive. Like the circles you roll in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, he has an amazing background. Like his background is like.
But yeah, I'm glad that you guys got to have some FaceTime 101 to get to ask. Yeah,
I just right away. I sent the LinkedIn request for Prashant sir, but I'm already in contact with John. To you also, I just. So that I just want to learn more. In this space, that's what I love about this country. Like, there are no, it's true in every country, there are no limits if you want to learn from everything. But But I just love this culture, and that is the reason why I love to have guidance in this new giant corporate world compared to other countries. And who knows, maybe I may have my own startup in the coming decade, inspired by Prashant.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. Justin, are you open to sticking around after we go off live? Because I maybe they'll ask you some questions about the program. But Prashant, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I feel like this episode should be turned into a textbook so I can just give the students. You've just been packed full of so much knowledge. Thank you so much.
So much,
Yeah,
Prashant.
thank you all very much. Appreciate y'all for having us.
Thank
over.
you all. It was great. I appreciate it.
All the best, guys. I mean, you guys are all doing great. And the fact that you're showing up to something like this means that you have the drive to make it big, and, sky's the limit. So, keep going at it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.